The art of disappearing. Nina Hartley had perfected the art of becoming invisible. Each morning at Sterling Global Investments in downtown Chicago, she walked through the glass doors wearing the same uniform, baggy gray slacks, oversized navy sweaters, and a long cardigan that hung past her knees. Her auburn hair stayed pulled into a tight bun that made her scalp ache by noon. Thick-framed glasses sat on her nose, though her vision was perfect. She needed no correction except the kind that made people look past her. At 27 years old, Nina occupied a small desk on the 9th floor, tucked between the copy machine and the supply closet. The location suited her perfectly. People passed by without a second glance, absorbed in their own important lives. She had worked at Sterling Global for 4 years, and most employees could not recall her name. Some called her the quiet girl. Others did not call her anything at all. A mind that sees everything. But Nina Hartley was anything except ordinary. Behind those unnecessary glasses lived a mind that could calculate complex financial models while others struggled with basic spreadsheets. She understood market patterns the way musicians understood melody. Numbers spoke to her in a language few could comprehend. Her quarterly reports contained insights that senior analysts missed completely. Her predictions about emerging markets proved accurate with almost supernatural precision. Yet her supervisor, George Preston, presented every piece of her work as his own creation. Each brilliant analysis Nina completed appeared in board meetings with George's name attached. He collected bonuses for her insights while she remained at the same salary she had started with 4 years ago. Nina never complained. She had learned her lesson at her previous job in Boston. The wound that never healed. Back then, fresh out of university with honors in economics, Nina had dressed differently. She wore fitted skirts and pretty blouses. She styled her hair and applied makeup. She smiled at colleagues and joined after-work gatherings. Then a senior partner at the Boston firm cornered her in the elevator one evening. His words still echoed in her nightmares. "You're too pretty to be this smart. It makes people uncomfortable. Maybe focus on one or the other." When she reported his behavior to human resources, everything changed. Suddenly her work contained errors that did not exist. Her projects were reassigned. Whispers followed her through hallways. Within 6 months, they manufactured enough complaints to let her go. The experience taught Nina a brutal lesson: being invisible hurt less than being seen for the wrong reasons. The morning that changed everything. This particular Wednesday morning started like any other. Nina completed 2 weeks of financial projections before her first coffee break. She spotted 5 critical errors in the monthly portfolio reports that would have cost Sterling Global nearly $3 million. She corrected everything and sent the files to George's email without comment or expectation of acknowledgement. At exactly 2:30 in the afternoon, the elevator doors opened on the 9th floor. Conversations died mid-sentence. Heads turned toward the executive suite entrance. Ethan Stone stepped into their ordinary world like a storm wrapped in expensive fabric. The CEO rarely left his corner office on the 25th floor. At 36 years old, Ethan Stone had built Sterling Global from his father's small investment firm into a financial empire. Magazines called him ruthless. Business journals praised his brilliant strategies. Society pages photographed him at charity events with beautiful women on his arm, though none lasted more than a few months. When storms notice shadows. Tall and commanding with dark hair touched with silver at the temples, Ethan moved through the 9th floor with purpose. His charcoal suit probably cost more than Nina earned in 6 months. His steel-gray eyes swept across the office until they landed on George Preston's desk. Nina watched from her corner, half hidden behind her computer monitor, as the two men spoke. Then George pointed directly at her. Her stomach dropped like an elevator cut from its cables. Ethan Stone's gaze followed the gesture. For the first time in 4 years, someone from the executive floor looked directly at Nina Hartley. She froze with her hands hovering above her keyboard, unable to breathe or move or think. He walked toward her. Every eye in the office tracked his path. Nina felt heat crawl up her neck and flood her cheeks. She wanted to disappear into the floor, to become truly invisible instead of just pretending. "Miss Hartley." His voice carried the smooth warmth of aged whiskey. "I need to speak with you." "My office." "Now." The whispers erupted before he even turned away. Nina stood on shaking legs, smoothing down her oversized sweater, though it made no difference. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she followed him to the elevator. The ride to the 25th floor felt like ascending into another dimension. Truth in the tower. The executive suite existed in a different world from the 9th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered breathtaking views of Lake Michigan. Modern art decorated walls of polished marble. Ethan's corner office contained more space than Nina's entire apartment. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a leather chair across from his massive desk. Nina perched on the edge of the seat, hands folded tightly in her lap. Up close, Ethan Stone was even more intimidating. But something in his expression caught her attention. Not anger or judgment. Curiosity mixed with something else she could not identify. "I have been reviewing the financial analysis from your department," he began, pulling up files on his computer. "The work is exceptional. Brilliant, actually. George Preston has been presenting these reports for months." He paused, those gray eyes locking onto hers. "But the metadata tells a different story. You created all of this, Miss Hartley. Why has nobody heard your name?" The question hung in the air between them. Nina could have lied. Should have lied to protect herself. But something about the direct way he looked at her made honesty feel like the only possible response. "Because at my last job, speaking up got me labeled as difficult and destroyed my career," she said quietly. "I learned that being invisible was safer than being seen." Something shifted in his expression. Understanding perhaps. Or anger on her behalf. "Miss Hartley, I have a proposition for you. A proposal that changes everything." Ethan Stone leaned back in his leather chair, studying Nina with an intensity that made her want to shrink into her oversized sweater. But she held his gaze, refusing to look away even as her pulse raced. "In 3 weeks, I am hosting the annual Sterling Charity Foundation Gala at the Four Seasons," he said. "We are expecting over 600 guests. Politicians, investors, philanthropists. People who control billions of dollars in capital. I need someone by my side who actually understands the financial landscape we operate in." Nina's throat went dry. She understood where this was heading, but the reality felt impossible to grasp. "I need an expert, Miss Hartley. Not another social companion who smiles for cameras but cannot discuss the difference between bearer bonds and municipal securities. From what I have seen of your work, you are the most qualified person in this entire company. Will you accompany me to the gala?" The words landed like stones in still water, sending ripples through her carefully constructed world. A gala meant evening gowns and photographers. It meant being visible in the worst possible way. It meant people looking at her, judging her, reducing her to nothing more than her appearance again. "I appreciate the offer, Mr. Stone," Nina managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "But I am certain there are better choices. Perhaps someone from the senior analyst team. I have made my choice." His tone left no room for argument. "The question is whether you will accept it. The weight of decision." Nina returned to her desk in a daze. The afternoon passed in a blur of numbers that refused to make sense. Her usually sharp mind felt scattered, unable to focus on the reports in front of her. When 5 o'clock arrived, she gathered her things and fled the building as quickly as possible. Her apartment in Lincoln Park occupied the 3rd floor of an old brownstone. The climb up the narrow stairs usually cleared her head, but today her thoughts remained tangled. Before she could unlock her door, her neighbor appeared. Patricia Moore was 79 years old with silver hair, bright blue eyes, and the energy of someone half her age. She had lived in the building for 40 years and knew everyone's business, usually before they knew it themselves. In her hands, she carried a plate covered with aluminum foil. "Fresh blueberry scones," Patricia announced. "And you look like you need to talk. Come sit with me, dear." Nina found herself in Patricia's cozy living room, surrounded by photographs and knitted blankets, pouring out the entire story. The years of hiding. The brilliant work nobody acknowledged. And now this impossible invitation from Ethan Stone. Patricia listened without interruption, her weathered hands wrapped around a teacup. When Nina finally fell silent, the older woman set down her cup with a gentle clink. "This man sees your talent," Patricia said softly. "And he is asking you to step into the light. Tell me why that terrifies you so much." "Because the last time I did, everything fell apart." Nina's voice cracked. "They made me choose between being smart and being acceptable. I cannot go through that again." "Oh, sweetheart." Patricia reached across and took Nina's hand. "You are not living right now. You are just surviving. There is a difference. This Mr. Stone is offering you a chance to be seen for who you really are. Both your brilliant mind and whatever beauty you are hiding under those terrible sweaters. Seeds of courage." That night, Nina stood in front of her bathroom mirror for the first time in years. Really looking at herself. She removed her glasses and unpinned her hair. Auburn waves fell past her shoulders, catching the light. The face staring back at her seemed like a stranger. Delicate features. High cheekbones. Green eyes that used to sparkle before she taught them to remain dull and forgettable. Who was she anymore? Had she hidden so long that she forgot the woman underneath? Sleep came in fits and starts. By dawn, Nina had made her decision. She arrived at Ethan Stone's office at 8 o'clock sharp, before most of the building had come to life. His assistant looked surprised but showed her in immediately. Ethan sat behind his desk, already absorbed in reports despite the early hour. He looked up when she entered, and something flickered across his expression. Surprise mixed with what might have been hope. "I will attend the gala with you," Nina said before she could lose her nerve. "But I have conditions." One dark eyebrow rose. "I am listening. Nobody in this office can know about this arrangement until the night of the event. And I handle my own preparation. No stylists, no makeover teams, no consultants. I do this my way, or I do not do it at all." Ethan studied her for a long moment. Then he stood and walked around his desk until only a few feet separated them. Up close, she could smell his cologne. Something clean and expensive with notes of cedar and bergamot. "You drive a hard bargain, Miss Hartley." A slight smile played at the corner of his mouth. "Fine. Your way. But I want to see you at least once before the event. Just to ensure everything coordinates properly. You will see me at the gala, Mr. Stone." Nina held her ground. "Trust me. Transformation begins." The following 3 weeks became a secret adventure. During work hours, Nina maintained her invisible routine. Oversized clothes. Tight bun. Clear glasses. She completed her assignments with the same brilliant efficiency while George Preston continued taking credit. But her evenings transformed into something magical. Patricia Moore became her guide and confidant. The older woman pulled out an ancient sewing machine that had belonged to her mother and began creating something extraordinary. "We are not going for obvious," Patricia declared, draping deep sapphire fabric across Nina's shoulders. "We are going for unforgettable. That is much more powerful." The dress took shape slowly over long evenings filled with tea and conversation. Rich midnight blue that brought out the green in Nina's eyes. A fitted bodice that celebrated her natural curves instead of hiding them. An elegant neckline that suggested rather than revealed. The skirt flowed like water when Nina moved, catching light in its folds. "Now for the rest," Patricia said, making phone calls to old friends. She found a hairstylist named Carmen who worked from a small salon in Wicker Park. Carmen took one look at Nina's severely pulled back hair and shook her head. "You have been torturing these beautiful waves," Carmen said, running her fingers through Nina's hair. "Time to set them free." For 3 hours, Carmen worked magic. She trimmed away years of damage, added subtle highlights that caught the light like copper, and taught Nina how to style the waves naturally. Then came a makeup lesson from Carmen's sister Rosa. "You do not need much," Rosa explained, showing Nina techniques with a gentle hand. "You have natural beauty. We are simply letting it show instead of hiding it." A CEO's distraction. While Nina prepared in secret, Ethan Stone found himself increasingly distracted. He caught himself looking for her in the building, hoping to glimpse her hurrying past with her arms full of reports. During meetings, his mind wandered to their brief conversations. The way she spoke with quiet confidence about financial strategies. The intelligence that shone through despite her attempts to remain forgettable. His business partner and closest friend, Lucas Bennett, noticed immediately. "You have checked your phone 6 times in the last 10 minutes, Lucas observed during a strategy meeting. "This is not like you. What is happening?" Ethan considered deflecting, then decided against it. Lucas had known him since their university days. "There is someone. An analyst from the 9th floor. Nina Hartley. She is attending the gala with me." Lucas's eyebrows shot up. "The woman who actually creates all those brilliant reports George Preston presents as his own? I have read her work. She is exceptional." "She is," Ethan agreed quietly. "And I think I might be in serious trouble." "Good trouble or bad trouble?" "I have no idea yet." The night of the gala approached like a storm on the horizon. Ethan found himself nervous for the first time in years. He had attended hundreds of these events. Smiled for countless photographs. Made small talk with the wealthy and powerful until the words lost all meaning. But this time felt different. This time, Nina Hartley would be by his side. And he had no idea what to expect, the grand reveal. The Four Seasons ballroom glittered like a jewel box on the night of the Sterling Charity Foundation Gala. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing light across marble floors. 600 guests arrived in limousines and town cars, dressed in designer gowns and tailored tuxedos. Photographers lined the entrance, cameras flashing as Chicago's elite made their grand entrances. Ethan Stone arrived early, greeting donors and investors with practiced charm. But his attention kept drifting toward the entrance. He adjusted his bow tie for the 7th time, earning an amused look from Lucas Bennett. "Relax," Lucas said, champagne glass in hand. "She will be here." "I am perfectly relaxed," Ethan lied. "You have been checking your watch every 3 minutes for the past half hour." At 8:45, the ballroom had filled completely. Conversations hummed beneath the orchestral music. Wait staff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Ethan stood near the grand staircase, forcing himself to focus on a discussion with several Japanese investors about emerging Asian markets. Then the room shifted. Conversations paused mid-sentence. Heads turned toward the entrance. Even the orchestra seemed to soften, as if making space for something extraordinary. Nina descended the staircase like a vision from a dream made real. Beauty unveiled. The midnight blue gown caught the chandelier light, making her seem to glow from within. The fabric hugged her figure perfectly, revealing curves that oversized sweaters had hidden for years. Her auburn hair fell in soft waves over bare shoulders, and minimal makeup allowed her natural beauty to shine through. But the transformation went deeper than appearance. Nina moved with quiet confidence, head high and shoulders back. She had stopped apologizing for taking up space in the world. Her green eyes swept across the ballroom until they found Ethan, and a small smile touched her lips. Ethan forgot how to breathe. This was not a transformation. This was revelation. The beauty had always existed, hidden beneath baggy clothes and careful anonymity. Now she was allowing the world to see what he had somehow known was there all along. He crossed the ballroom in long strides, barely aware of the whispers that followed his path. When he reached her at the bottom of the stairs, words failed him completely. "You are late," he finally managed, his voice rougher than intended. "A woman should always make an entrance," Nina replied, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "At least, that is what Patricia told me. You are absolutely stunning." "Still me, Ethan. Just without the armor." He offered his arm and she took it. Together they entered the ballroom, and Ethan felt the weight of hundreds of eyes tracking their movement. Whispers rippled through the crowd like waves. He caught fragments of conversation. "Who is she? I have never seen her before. Stone looks completely smitten." For once, Ethan did not care about appearances or what the society pages would print tomorrow. All that mattered was the woman beside him, finally allowing herself to shine. A night of magic. The evening unfolded like a fairy tale. Nina charmed the Japanese investors with her knowledge of Asian market trends, discussing the rise of technology sectors in South Korea with the same ease most people discussed weather. She impressed a group of European bankers by predicting currency fluctuations with stunning accuracy. When a senator's wife asked about municipal bonds, Nina explained the complexities in simple terms that made everyone lean in to listen. She was not just beautiful. She was brilliant, funny, completely captivating. Ethan found himself falling harder with every conversation, every smile she shared with others, every moment her hand rested on his arm. During dinner, they sat at the head table surrounded by Sterling Global's board members and their spouses. Nina handled their questions with grace, never once mentioning that she worked on the 9th floor or that George Preston took credit for her analyses. She simply existed in this moment, confident and radiant. "You have been hiding quite the gem, Stone," remarked Jonathan Pierce, the company's longest-serving board member. "Miss Hartley is remarkable. Where did you find her?" "She has been with Sterling Global for 4 years," Ethan said, watching Nina's expression carefully. "Working in the analytics department." Jonathan's eyebrows rose. "For years? How have we never met her before?" "Because I made sure nobody noticed me," Nina said quietly. It seemed safer that way. Confronting the past. The moment Ethan had been dreading arrived during the cocktail hour. George Preston appeared with his wife, a tall blonde woman who looked perpetually bored. George's eyes widened when he recognized Nina, shock giving way to something uglier. "Nina? I hardly recognized you." His tone carried an edge. "This is quite the transformation." "Good evening, George." Nina's voice remained steady, though Ethan felt her hand tighten slightly on his arm. "I did not realize you knew Mr. Stone personally." George's smile did not reach his eyes. "You should have mentioned it at the office." "There was nothing to mention," Nina replied calmly. "Until now." "Well, you clean up nicely. Who would have thought the girl by the copy machine could look like this?" George laughed, but the sound held no warmth. Ethan felt anger flash hot through his chest. He stepped closer to Nina, his hand moving to the small of her back in a protective gesture. "Miss Hartley is the most talented analyst in our entire company," Ethan said, his voice cold enough to freeze fire. "Her work has generated millions in revenue. Perhaps you would know that if you had bothered to look past her desk location." George's face reddened. "Of course, I simply meant." "I know exactly what you meant." Ethan cut him off. "Enjoy your evening, Preston. We have other people to speak with." As they walked away, Nina exhaled slowly. "Thank you for that. Though you may have just made an enemy." "George Preston has been stealing your work for 4 years," Ethan said. "He was already an enemy. He just did not know it yet." Dancing under the stars. When the orchestra began playing, Ethan led Nina onto the dance floor. She fit perfectly in his arms, moving with natural grace as they swayed to the music. Around them, other couples danced, but Ethan was aware only of Nina. The way the chandelier light caught in her hair. The warmth of her hand in his. The scent of jasmine that seemed to surround her. "I have a confession," Nina said softly, looking up at him. "I was terrified to come here tonight. You hid it well. You have been magnificent." Patricia helped. She told me that hiding was not the same as living. That I had been just surviving instead of truly existing in the world. Nina paused, her green eyes searching his face. "Why did you really invite me, Ethan? You could have asked anyone." "Because when I read your work, I saw brilliance. Pure, undeniable brilliance. And when I looked into your background, I discovered someone who had been systematically erased by people who should have celebrated her talent." He pulled her slightly closer. "I wanted to see what would happen if you stopped hiding. If someone finally gave you the recognition you deserved. And what do you see now? Everything I hoped for and more than I could have imagined." The song ended, but they remained on the dance floor, lost in each other's eyes. Around them, the gala continued with its speeches and auctions and carefully orchestrated charity. But in that moment, Ethan and Nina existed in their own world. A new beginning. Later, as the evening wound down, Ethan and Nina stood on the terrace overlooking the Chicago skyline. The spring air carried a hint of coolness, and Ethan draped his jacket over her shoulders without thinking. "What happens on Monday?" Nina asked quietly. "When I return to my desk by the copy machine." "You are not going back to that desk." Ethan turned to face her fully. "Starting Monday, you will have an office on the 24th floor. Senior analyst position. Your own team. And your name on every report you create." Nina's eyes widened. "Ethan, I cannot accept that. People will think. People will think exactly what is true. That I finally recognized the most talented person in my company and promoted her accordingly. What they think about us personally is none of their concern." "Us?" The word came out as barely a whisper. "I am not good at games, Nina. I do not know how to pretend I do not feel what I feel." He reached up and tucked a strand of auburn hair behind her ear. "Tonight you let the world see who you really are. Now I am asking you to let me see too. Not the analyst. Not the woman in oversized sweaters. Just you." "I am scared," she admitted. "What if I disappoint you? What if I am not enough? You have been more than enough since the moment I read your first report." Ethan smiled, his thumb brushing across her cheek. "The only question is whether you are willing to take a chance. On the job. On me. On letting yourself truly live instead of just survive." Nina looked out over the city lights, thinking about the past 4 years. All the hiding and fear and making herself small. Then she thought about Patricia's words. About the difference between surviving and living. About the woman she used to be before fear taught her to disappear. She turned back to Ethan, and this time her smile held no hesitation. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes to all of it." Ethan pulled her close and kissed her beneath the Chicago stars. Around them, the city hummed with life and possibility. Inside the ballroom, the gala continued its glittering dance. But out on the terrace, Nina Hartley and Ethan Stone began writing a new story together. One where being seen was not something to fear but something to celebrate. Where brilliance and beauty could coexist without apology. Where love grew not from hiding but from the courage to reveal your true self to someone willing to see you completely. Nina had spent years making herself invisible. But sometimes the greatest transformation comes not from changing who you are, but from finally allowing yourself to be seen. The end.